Do you ever wonder how your email works? You may have even looked it up online before, and they use all these technical acronyms. I like to explain how email works in more simple terms, and it may not be quite as detailed as some of the things you can find online, but I think it's a lot more understandable. I'll show you how email works today on Tuesday Tech Training. Hello, and welcome to today's Tuesday Tech Training. My name is Jennifer Stewart. I'm the owner of Gateway Productivity, and I'm a tech and productivity trainer. Today, I'll show you how email works, and not necessarily going to get into all the nuts and bolts. And full disclaimer, I don't even know all the technical language, so I may not get some of those different pieces right, but I want to give you a basic understanding in understandable terms and plain terms how everything works together and the different parts, especially for business owners, that I get a lot of questions from my clients about. What is domain? How does that go with it? And that can go into something you've probably seen before, the acronym DNS. And I'm just going to briefly cover that, but we're not going to go into details because, as I said, I don't necessarily know all the technical parts. But we'll go into the domain, we'll go into different email programs and what that can mean and how that works. Different email programs can work differently. We'll go into POP and IMAP. You may have seen those before. We'll just throw out the acronym SMTP, which you may have seen. Again, I'm not going to go into what it stands for, but I'll tell you kind of what it's for, what it does. And we'll talk about how all of these different pieces work together. Today, we won't be doing much of a demo, but I'm using different websites as a guide to help explain the different elements that we'll be talking about regarding email. So first, let's talk about domain. I have my website up here because I had to purchase a domain, which is gatewayproductivity.com, and that is what my email runs through. So let's start from scratch. If you're a business owner, if you have a domain, your email can run through your domain. That is an option. It's not a definite. You don't necessarily have that right off the bat. You may have to set that up with your domain provider, but that is an option. If you're someone who has an email coming from Gmail, let's see what all we got here. We've got AOL, Gmail, you might have Outlook, you might have Yahoo. iCloud has mail available as well. Any of those, each of those is a domain in and of itself. Yahoo.com, that's a domain. So that means Yahoo is the one who has your email, and so on and so forth. AOL, Gmail, Outlook.com, all of those are places, those are domains that can have your email. And it just so happens that you can make your own as well. Now, if you do choose to have your own, you probably have it through a host company, which that is your GoDaddy, your HostGator, Bluehost. Mine is QTH. That's a much smaller one. Smaller hosting companies you may not have even heard of before. The other three that I listed are really big ones. But that is who you buy the domain through. And then you can have an email go through that domain that you purchased. And so the next piece of this is, what email program are you using? So domain is key. Knowing where that email is starting from is the first piece. And then next is, what email program are you using? So for me, I could choose to go through the webmail that is provided by my host, which is QTH. That is an option that I would have. That would be at the source. That would be at the source of where my email is coming from. For your Yahoo, AOL, Gmail, Outlook.com, all of those, if you're going straight to their websites and using them to get to your email, you're using their email program, which they are also the host of your email. So it's kind of all in one place. Then you have things like, let me pull up my Outlook. Outlook on your computer, and it can be kind of confusing. Outlook can play both sides. It can be one that you can see here. I have an Outlook.com account. So that one is hosted through Outlook.com. And it also is available in my Outlook program on my computer. But this can also bring in other email accounts. You can see I actually am pulling in a Gmail account here. I have actually a couple different Gmail accounts. Outlook is a place that can bring in email accounts from multiple different posts, basically. And again, disclaimer, these are probably not the right terms, but they're terms that I think make sense for you and me. Some additional examples of the type of thing that Outlook's program can do on your computer is Apple Mail or Mac Mail, you may have heard it called. That can be available on any of your Apple devices. This also can be done with Mozilla, which is run by Firefox. That's one that some people use still. And so these, again, are ones where they are bringing in email from another location. Apple or Mac Mail, it can pull in an iCloud account, which would be something that they actually host. So that's kind of like this Outlook where I have an outlook.com email address, but then they can also pull in your Gmail accounts and other domains if you have a domain, especially for your company or for the company that you work for. So that's another important piece of how your email works, is what email program are you using? So if you're using a program where you have to pull email in, this goes into that POP and IMAP idea that I was talking about at the beginning. POP is a one-way street. So if you choose to use POP, sometimes called POP3, when you are setting up your email, let's say you have an Outlook or you have a Mac Mail and you're pulling in an email account, you can see the letters right here, IMAP, and I don't even know what they stand for, so I won't give you that information. You're probably not going to use it again. You can probably look it up pretty easily. But the IMAP and the POP, you can see here, both of mine are IMAP, but POP is a one-way street. So your email is coming from another location. So let's say you do have an email and it's through GoDaddy and you choose to pull it into Outlook. So then that is a POP account, or you have a Yahoo account and you want to pull it into Outlook or Mac Mail or something like that. If you choose POP, it will come from that location into the email program that you decide. And any changes that you make, if you delete anything, if you create folders, anything you do in your email program, which would be your Mac Mail or your Outlook or something like that, anything you do there will not go back to the original source. So that's POP. IMAP, which is what I typically choose. That's not always available, but I typically choose that one. That's a two-way street. That's where the email that you're bringing in, so say my Gmail account here, bringing my Gmail into Outlook, and it's a two-way street. If I make a change in Outlook, if I delete something, if I send something, if I create a folder, it's a two-way street. It's going to sync back to my Gmail account. So I could go to gmail.com and log in and see all the changes that I made in my Outlook. And that's the same again for Mac Mail, for Mozilla. So that's when you may have seen the IMAP and the POP references. And you do actually have that option in Gmail now. Gmail can pull emails from other places as well. I believe you can do it certainly you can do it in outlook.com. It kind of depends. They change over time whether they allow that or not. So most of the programs these days will pull emails from other places. So you may see those references if you choose to try to group your emails together in one place. The last thing I want to talk about is incoming versus outgoing email. When you set things up, especially when you're doing it on your phone, you'll probably see something that says SMTP. Again, I'm not going to go into what that stands for, but that has to do with your outgoing mail. The email programs treat incoming and outgoing as separate types of things because different things have to happen for those. We don't really care what exactly is happening, at least I don't. If you want to, you can find more information online. But basically, it has two different ways of handling things. So the incoming is one way, and then the SMTP is what handles outgoing. And that's pretty standard. That's almost always what's going to be included in outgoing messages when you're setting stuff up in the background. So that's just an important thing for you to know, especially when you're setting things up on your phone. You also would need that information here if you're setting things up in Outlook or Apple Mail or Mac Mail. And you can see right here in my Outlook that we have IMAP SMTP. So for my incoming, I'm doing IMAP where it's the two-way street. And then for my outgoing, it's always going to be SMTP. However, you see this last one is Outlook.com. So I'm in the Outlook program. They're calling that Microsoft Exchange. So that's where Microsoft already is hosting it. So it's inherent to my Outlook program, as long as I'm logged in with it. The last thing we'll go through is kind of how all this goes together. Again, I'm not going to go into the details of how an email is sent and all that kind of stuff, but I found a really good graphic by How To Geek, and I'll put that link in the notes below this video. And they just had a great way of showing a simple picture of what it looks like. And so here I will do this so that you can see it. Here is basically what happens when your email goes. So email is composed in your mail client. So mail client being your email program, whether that is you're using Outlook, but you're doing a Gmail account in Outlook, you're going to gmail.com, you're going to AOL.com, you are at your webmail for your host, wherever it is, you're starting there to send your email, obviously. That email has a domain at the end, just like yours does, so does the recipient's. And so then you've got your SMTP server. That's what we talked about for outgoing mail. That does its thing. The DNS server, that has to do with your domain. That's domain name server. So it goes and does something there, and then it hits the internet to go to the next place. That's really all this is. Just the internet is driving it to where it needs to go, just kind of like on the road. And then it reaches the location. You see this, ericus.com. It reaches the location, and then it goes through the flip side of the process there. So MTA, we won't worry about what that's called, but it's basically the incoming mail for this person's server, and a server being the computer that houses that domain. Comes in here, and then the user account, they may have some kind of spam filter, things like that. It will go through all of that, and then it eventually reaches that person. And you can see here the IMAP and the POP that we talked about. It may go through an IMAP, the two-way street, or it may go through POP and go straight into their email program. And it just kind of depends. Some of that may be working in the background if their host, like AOL, is the same thing as where they access their email. This may just be kind of working in the background and they don't even realize it. If it's the case where they're using Outlook, but they're pulling a Gmail account into Outlook, that is more readily happening in the background. So that's really what's going on. What's really important for business owners, and the questions I get a lot from my clients is, the domain versus having a gmail.com account. If you have something like Gmail, AOL, Yahoo, and you're a professional business, I would recommend considering, if you have a domain, trying to get an email through that. You would contact your host or where you bought your domain from to figure out that piece, having an email go through there. And then you can actually choose where you want that email to live. It would start at the host location, but you can choose to have it go into Outlook. You could choose to have it go into Gmail. There's lots of different choices, but you do need to designate that you would like an email, and you have to determine what you would like that email to be, because truly that domain is what runs the email. Without the domain at the end, you don't even have an email address. And remember, the domain is, for me, gatewayproductivity.com, but it can be things like Yahoo and AOL and gmail.com. Have you had a light bulb moment from this training? If so, please let me know in the comments below. You can also leave questions in the comments below, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible with those. I would also love to have ideas if you have any ideas of videos you would like to see in the future. You can also give the video a thumbs up or share it with someone you think could benefit from the information. And don't forget to subscribe by clicking the red button below. Then you'll have the option to receive notifications by clicking the bell icon if you'd like to have that. And I thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time.